Welcome everyone to episode 5 of my baby Pokemon series in Pokemon Crystal. To this point, I've completed the game with Togepi, Tyrogue, Smoochum, and Magby. So today, it is time to give Elekid its chance. When comparing the base stat totals of all the baby Pokemon introduced in Generation 2, Elekid is very close to being number 1. Its base stat total is only 5 less than Magby's. Before we go any further, I'm just going to mention that there will be spoilers for all of the 4 previous videos in this series. So now with that out of the way, let's talk about Magby, because it did quite well in Pokemon Crystal. So far it is the top performing baby out of all of them, and it earned a time of 1 hour 29 minutes and 29 seconds. That is a very respectable performance for a Pokemon that really was just supposed to be there so that the egg mechanic could be a little bit more fleshed out. However, base stat totals aren't everything, the distribution of these stats also matters. So, Elekid has 45 HP, 63 attack, 37 defense, 65 special attack, 55 special defense, and 95 speed. Overall, this is a decent distribution. It's nice that it has good physical attack as well as special attack, so it can use a diversity of moves without being penalized. Also, I do have to say that having a little bit more than 15 defense is nice. That did make Smoochum feel very squishy yesterday. All of that being said, I don't think stats are the most important thing about this Pokemon. I think its move pool is. Before I started filming this series, I took it upon myself to rank all of their move pools, and during that process, I decided that I thought Elekid had the best set out of all of the babies. So let's go through it. It starts with Quick Attack and Leer, which is quite good for an early game set. Quick Attack has priority, and Leer lowers defense, allowing Quick Attack to deal more damage. Plus, Quick Attack can't miss, so it's more reliable than a move like Tackle. Beyond that, at only level 9, Elekid learns Thunder Punch, which is base 75 power and has 100% accuracy. From there through level up, its next 3 moves will not be useful for this playthrough. However, at level 41, it does gain access to Thunderbolt, so I don't have to wait until I get the move tutor after defeating Lance to learn this powerful same type attack bonus move. Here, I do want to mention an interesting Generation 1 fact, and that is that Pikachu is the only Pokemon that learns this move through level up, and it only gets it in Yellow version. Yes, if you wanted an electric type to have the move Thunderbolt in Generation 1, you basically just have to use Lieutenant Surge's TM. In Generation 2, things were a little bit better for Thunderbolt. They gave it to both Pikachu as well as Raichu, which I think just makes sense, and then they also gave it to Elekid as well as Electabuzz. I find it really hilarious that a legendary Pokemon like Raikou that was introduced in this generation cannot learn Thunderbolt until after Lance. By the way, the move tutor is also Pokemon Crystal exclusive, so in Gold and Silver, there is no way for the legendary beast to get Thunderbolt. So in terms of level up moves, Elekid has it very good, and things just keep getting better when you check out the TMs that it can learn. It gets access to the 3 standard normal type moves, Headbutt, Swift, and Return, and it also gets access to the early game staple, Mud Slap. It is so funny that an electric type gets this ground type move, whereas Gligar, a ground type, does not. Beyond this, things keep getting better. It gets Dynamic Punch, which is kind of okay for coverage, Psychic, which could be useful, but it comes quite late in the playthrough. You have to arrive in Saffron City after all, but most notably, it gains access to the 3 elemental punches: Ice Punch, Thunder Punch, and Fire Punch. For this playthrough, the rival is going to have the Chikorita team. This is his strongest team overall in the game, and it's also the one that Elekid is going to struggle the most against. I always choose for him to have the starter that is strongest against my Pokemon, so that it feels like I'm playing in the spirit of the game. The early game is very straightforward for Elekid, as I'm sure that you can imagine. My goal is to level up to level 9, where I gain access to Thunder Punch, and then I'm going to use it to defeat Falkner as fast as is possible. I shouldn't need too much additional training because Elekid is a medium fast growth rate Pokemon, just like Smoochum as well as Magby. After all, these 3 are kind of a trio. However, it's not perfect just because they don't have the same base stat totals. By the time I'm heading into Violet City, I'm level 10, so with that, I think that I'm ready to face Falkner. His AI is going to prioritize using Mud Slap against Elekid, which could cause things to spiral out of control if I don't get 1-hits. That being said, the first Pidgey is incredibly weak, so Thunder Punch easily one-shots it. The Pidgeotto is next. Thunder Punch does massive damage, knocking it out, and Elekid takes an easy victory over the first gym leader. Next is Union Cave, and in here I teach Elekid Mud Slap because it's going to counter the rock-type Pokemon that show up here. Also head to the basement floor and pick up the TM for Swift, which I can teach in the place of Leer. By the way, that's why I mentioned at the beginning of the video that it wasn't going to be useful as a level up move, just because I will have already learnt it with the TM by that time in the playthrough. The rockets in Slowpoke Well are very easy for Elekid to dispatch. Thunder Punch is so good this early on, like I cannot understate how fantastic this move is. I crushed my way through all the bug catchers in Bugsy's gym, and now at level 18, I am ready to face him. Up first is Metapod. I go for Thunder Punch, and of course it gets a one-hit, so I assume that is going to be the exact same for the Kakuna. It has the same amount of special defense, by the way, and less health. I do get the one-hit, and now all that's left is Scyther, but this thing is weak to electric-type moves. While Thunder Punch doesn't knock it out, it just goes for Fury Cutter, doing a tiny amount of damage, and then tries Quick Attack, which also doesn't do very much. So Elekid has very quickly earned itself the second badge. While the first two major battles of the game have been very easy for Elekid, the rival in Azalea Town can be one of the hardest trainers in the entire game. This is usually because he has a type advantage over you with his ace Pokemon, and in the case that it's Bayleaf, it's really strong because it has the move Razor Leaf, which is base 55 power with an increased chance to critical hit. After I one-hit the Ghastly, the rival sends it in second. I go for Thunder Punch, getting a critical hit, which does almost half. Bayleaf sets up Reflect, but that doesn't matter. In Generation 2, the move's damage category is determined by its type, so Thunder Punch is always going to be dealing special damage. Bayleaf does get a critical hit, which does over a third to me. However, I have a berry, so I'm going to heal some health, and I'm also doing a decent amount to the Bayleaf each turn. So I finish it off, clean up the Zubat, and with that, Elekid has defeated the rival. Still no problems. And from here, things are going to completely change for this tiny little electric type. By the way, I haven't mentioned it to this point, but I really like Elekid's design. It's kind of like chunky arms are very endearing to me, and I love the little plug-in kind of things on its head. It looks like it's a cable that's going to get plugged in to charge some kind of accessory. Just a great design. Anyways, now let's talk about the major moveset updates that I get in the next section of the game. First in the forest I get Headbutt, which is going to be my replacement for Quick Attack, at least at this point, and then in the department store I can buy the TMs for Ice Punch as well as Fire Punch. In this case I'm going to teach both of them to Elekid right away, so Ice Punch in the place of Swift, and Fire Punch in the place of Mud Slap. By the way, if you've seen a lot of my playthroughs, you will note that I usually keep Mud Slap for a significant portion of the run. That's usually because I want it as a counter to Steel-type Pokemon, specifically the Magnemite line, but in this case, Fire Punch will also provide me that coverage. As I defeat all the trainers in the gym, I just want everyone to note the fact that my moveset currently does not have a move with base power under 70. That is absolutely busted. It's also interesting to note that there isn't that much I can do to make this moveset better. I can learn Thunderbolt in the place of Thunder Punch and then Return in the place of Headbutt, probably Curse and Rest for red, but other than that, this is kind of just everything Elekid needs. But will the set be enough for it against Whitney? Let's find out. The first Pokemon she sends in is Clefairy. I go for Thunder Punch for maximum damage. It doesn't knock out. Clefairy uses Metronome, selects Dynamic Punch, which of course hits, confusing Elekid. It hits itself. Clefairy goes for Metronome again, choosing Fly, doing a little bit more damage before I knock it out. Miltank is next. I go for Thunder Punch. It does more than half. Alright, Miltank's Stomp does take Elekid down to orange health, but because of its speed stat, it just knocks the Miltank out on the next turn, and with that, I have gone 4 for 4 in major battles of this playthrough. Okay, so what is even going to stand in this baby's way? I'm really not sure. Technically, I don't have a type advantage over Morty, but Thunder Punch is already doing a lot of damage, and just outside of Ecruteak City, I can pick up the Magnet, which is going to give a 10% boost to the damage of electric-type moves. Making my chances against Morty even better is the fact that there is so much mandatory training in this section of the game. I have to face all the Kimono girls. None of them have a type advantage against Elekid, so it easily dispatches all of their Pokemon. They actually give really good experience yields. Beyond that, I continue my training west of Ecruteak City, and then later in the Lighthouse. In this area, I really like to use some of the ethers that I've collected to this point in the playthrough to extend my PP just so I can last a little bit longer without heading back to a Pokemon Center. As long as I do that, then I can use an escape rope to get out of the Lighthouse, and teleport from Abra to get back to Ecruteak City. This minimizes a lot of overworld time spent walking, and I can also get back to the burned tower quickly to face the rival. While this fight isn't mandatory in Gold and Silver, it is in Crystal version, there's a little guy that'll push you out of Morty's gym until you've beat the rival here. Thunder Punch one-hits the Haunter, next he sends in Magnemite, which I one-shot with Fire Punch, and then the rival sends in Bayleaf. Now, while I didn't have super effective damage against this Pokemon in Azalea Town, now I do in the form of either Fire Punch or Ice Punch. I think in this case I could have used Ice Punch for the chance to freeze, but Fire Punch gets the job done in one turn anyways. I polish off the final Zubat, and now it's time to take on Morty. I mentioned the magnet earlier, but for this fight specifically, the mint berry is the better choice. If I don't one-hit the Gengar, then it's going to have a chance to use Hypnosis, and while this move only has 45% accuracy when the AI uses it, I am still worried that it could potentially cause a loss. After all, Dream Eater has the potential to do a lot of damage. Another potential concern in this fight in solo challenges is either his Ghastly or Haunter putting a curse on your Pokemon. But in this case, Elekid is faster than all of his Pokemon, and Thunder Punch is able to get the one hit on his first two. Next, he sends in Gengar, which predictably survives. It tries Hypnosis, but with the accuracy debuff, it doesn't hit, and I finish the Gengar on the next turn, preserving my Mint Berry for Chuck, which is very convenient. The only Pokemon remaining, of course, is Haunter. I go for Thunder Punch, and it goes down to a single hit. If you watch the Magby as well as the Smoochum video, you'll know that both of those Pokemon did incredibly well in Crystal version. So let's compare these Pokemon's Morty splits. Smoochum had a time of 38 minutes and 35 seconds in its first playthrough against him, whereas Elekid has a time of 34 minutes and 16 seconds. It is more than 4 minutes faster. Interestingly enough, Magby's Morty split is 34 minutes and 18 seconds, so Elekid is only 2 seconds faster. With Magby's final time of 2 hours and 8 seconds in its first playthrough, I think that Elekid is on track to clock in with a similar time. However, we do have to remember that Magby lost a lot of time during the red split, so if Elekid doesn't have a similar problem, it has the potential to clock in significantly faster. If it's able to do this, it is probably going to be the fastest baby so far. Because this thing is absolutely tearing its way through the game, I decided to fight no optional trainers between Morty and Chuck. I finished off all the gym trainers, and then I was ready to take on the fighting type specialist. His lead Pokemon is a Primeape. I'm easily faster than this thing. I go for Thunder Punch, and it doesn't get the one hit, it just takes it to orange. Primeape strikes back with Karate Chop, which gets a critical hit, doing almost half to Elekid. However, his next Pokemon is Poliwrath, and I have super effective damage against it. I go for Thunder Punch, but Poliwrath survives on red health. It goes for Dynamic Punch, but unlike Whitney's Clefairy, it does not hit, allowing Elekid to take it out on the next turn. I think there if it had gotten lucky I would have lost, so maybe I need a slightly more consistent strategy for this fight in the next playthrough. Despite that though, you don't always need good strategy for Chuck. He is very inconsistent, so you can usually just luck through him with 1 or 2 resets. The next portion of the game provides a lot of mandatory training for Elekid because I have to go through the Rocket Hideout and clear out all the boring trainers here. With them out of the way, I am level 42, and now Elekid is ready to go up against Price. You would expect this battle to maybe be difficult because he does have a ground-type Pokemon in the form of Piloswine, but it doesn't know any ground-type moves. Plus, I have Fire Punch, which is super effective against it. And yeah, the Piloswine loves using moves like Mist and Fury Attack. I don't really know why they programmed it this way. I easily finish it off, and then he sends out his Dugong last. At this point in the run, I'm level 42, so of course Elekid has learned Thunderbolt, allowing me to easily one-shot the Water type and earn myself the 6th badge. This one gives me 2 really great advantages. Number 1, Elekid now gets a 12.5% boost to its special attack stat, and number 2, all ice-type moves have their damage increased by 12.5%. So if you look in the top left, you will now notice that Ice Punch has a slightly higher effective power when compared with Fire Punch. This is because of the ice boost that I just received. I'm going to have to wait all the way until Kanto when I defeat Belaine for fire moves to get their type base boost. Now, while Thunderbolt really doesn't need much help at this point in the playthrough, I do have to wait until I defeat Surge in order to get that type base boost. However, the Fire one is the one I'm more sad about because up next is Jasmine, and I would have really liked to boost the power of Fire type moves for this fight specifically. Still though, I have the Charcoal, which I picked up in Azalea Town earlier in the run, and Fire Punch is just able to one-shot the Magnemites. She sends in Steelix next. Now, despite this thing being a ground type, it knows no ground type moves. Fire Punch takes it down to a sliver of health. Steelix misses Iron Tail, Jasmine uses a Hyper Potion, delaying the inevitable, and then 1 Fire Punch later, because I roll better damage, I earn myself the 7th badge. Alright, so Elekid, just like Magby and Smoochum, is also on a tear through this game. The next trainer that typically causes resets in a playthrough of Pokemon Crystal is Petrel inside of the Radio Tower. He has a lot of Pokemon on his team. They love using Smokescreen and Sludge to poison you, and then the Weezing can use Explosion. With Elekid, this fight goes very smoothly for me, largely because the Coughing line has low special defense, so I can just use Thunderbolt to sweep through his entire team and take an easy victory. The The next potentially problematic fight is the battle against the rival in the underground, and yeah, this is a clean sweep. None of his Pokemon do damage to Elekid. The Meganium does survive my hit. It is the only Pokemon that survives, but it just sets up Reflect and I knock it out on the next turn. I defeat the next executive in Rocket Tower with no issues. He is not nearly as scary when you have Elekid in comparison to when I had Smoochum. After that, I head into Ice Path where I can collect the Nevermelt Ice to boost the power of Ice Punch because this move just really needs to be better. It's already got 2 boosts from the game, why not give it a third one? And this final boost comes just in time to take on the Dragon-type specialist Claire. Okay, so I'm sure all of you know how this fight is going to go. We are going to 1-hit the Dragonair's with Ice Punch, and we are going to 2-hit the Kingdra with Thunderbolt. If that doesn't play out, I will be incredibly surprised. Claire sends in all of her Dragonairs in a row, so they all get 1 shot as expected, and now all that's left is Kingdra. I guess the only loss condition here would be if it uses Smokescreen and I don't hit enough. It does go for Smokescreen, however my second Thunderbolt doesn't miss, and with that I have earned myself all 8 badges with no resets in just over an hour of real time. So now Elekid is heading towards the Indigo Plateau. On my way, I skip all optional trainers, fighting only the lady with the Rapidash, and then later at the end of Victory Road, the rival. I'll note during this fight that I could be holding the Magnet to really improve Thunderbolt's damage, but I'm holding the Nevermelt Ice instead. In cases like this where you see me holding a weird item or I don't have an item at all, it's usually that I'm thinking that changing the item is going to waste more time than just keeping the item that I currently have. Plus, I didn't really think that this fight was going to be that difficult. However, the Magneton paralyzes me, and then the Haunter uses Curse. The Kadabra sets up Future Sight, which is probably going to hit me. Next is Meganium, it sets up Reflect. I go for Fire Punch, which doesn't KO. As a result, I take Curse damage, followed by Razor Leaf damage, and then I knock it out. Alright, I'm gonna get hit by Future Sight, but in this case it misses? That's really convenient. As a result, I tank the Golbat's Wing Attack, Paralysis does not prevent my Thunderbolt, and I have defeated the rival. So going back to what I was talking about at the beginning of the fight, I really should have taken the time to equip the Paralyzed Cure Berry before that battle. It would have really smoothed things out. With the rival defeated, I can now head into Indigo Plateau and face the Elite Four. The first member is Will, and I have super effective damage against every single one of his Pokemon. Thunderbolt for the Xatu, Fire Punch for the Jinx, which by the way does not KO. The Jinx has way more special defense than it has physical defense. Remember, the punches are special in this generation. I could have potentially used Headbutt, but in the end it doesn't really matter if the Jinx just uses Double Slap and I polish it off. Next, Will sends in Executor. I go for Ice Punch because it has slightly more power than Fire Punch, and it just barely does not get the knockout. And Executor uses Psychic, which is quite unusual. It usually tries to set up Reflect or Leech Seed. In this case, it gets a critical hit and takes Elekid down to red health. Alright, that's a bit scary, but luckily for me, Xatu is next, which I easily one-shot with Thunderbolt, and then he sends in Slowbro, which also gets one-shot with Thunderbolt. Things were close there, but in the end, Elekid still has no resets going into the battle against Koga. For this fight, you might think that Fire Punch would be the best choice, but if you actually look at the effective power of Thunderbolt when I'm holding the Magnet, it does a little bit more damage than Fire Punch. That is, unless I'm facing the Fortress, then obviously Fire Punch is the correct choice. Against the Ground Venomoth, I go for Thunderbolt and knock it out in one hit. By the way, welcome new viewers, thank you so much for checking out my video. Following that, I two-shot the Muck and then one-shot the Crobat, so Koga was also easy. That being said, the first 2 League members tend to be fairly easy. It's really at Bruno where things start getting difficult. And today things start off badly for Elekid because it is weak to Dig, which the first Hitmontop loves to use. For this fight, notice that I have taught Return. It's because the Hitmons take a lot more damage from physical moves compared to special moves. However, it doesn't one-hit, so the Hitmontop is able to do about a quarter with Dig before it goes down. Next, I Ice Punch the Onix for a one-hit. Then against Hitmonlee, I go for Return, securing a one-hit as well, which is really good. That thing can do a lot of damage with High Jump Kick. Next, Hitmonchan hits for priority with Mach Punch, taking me down to around half health. Alright, there's only one Pokemon left, but it is the Machamp. This is by far Bruno's toughest Pokemon. It survives Thunderbolt, but I get Paralysis, so I was hoping that it was going to miss a Cross Chop due to the status, but it doesn't, hits Cross Chop, gets a critical hit, and knocks Elekid out. So that is my first reset of the run. In the next battle I make it back to the Machamp, but this time I have less health, which is not very encouraging. Thunderbolt also doesn't cause paralysis, however this time the Cross Chop just misses, and that is how I defeat Bruno. I will definitely need a better solution for him next time. Now things don't get easier from here because Karen's next. She is by far the best member of the Elite Four proper. This is largely because the Umbreon is one of the tankiest Pokemon in the game, and it loves to ruin your day with Sand Attack as well as Confuse Ray. Also, it's not nice here that my second Thunderbolt was not able to KO the Umbreon, so that means it is going to be a 3-hit. I get very unlucky here, having my accuracy dropped 3 times total, so I don't even get to finish the Umbreon off. I came back to see if I could get better luck against it. This time I get Paralysis, which is convenient. Thunderbolt knocks it out. I move on to the Vileplume, which I thought I would one-hit with Ice Punch, but it survives on Orange. Alright, so this thing does have a possibility of using Stun Spore on me. It doesn't get it in this fight. I also don't one-hit the Gengar. Okay, all of my damage ranges are really starting to fall behind here in this fight. Of course, Houndoom survives my hit. It crits with Flamethrower, taking me to 9 hit points. And that allows the Murkrow to use Quick Attack and finish Elekid. I definitely got really close there. As a result, I tried the fight again at this level. But this time, the Vileplume paralyzes me and everything spirals out of control. I don't even manage to knock out the Houndoom. So instead of trying it again, I'm going to use Rare Candies. By the way, this is really unfortunate. I was about to level up to level 55. There's nowhere to train when you're in Karen's chamber, so I just have to use these to get better damage ranges to make the fight easier. I used a total of 6, bringing Elekid up to level 60, and then I try again. Now I've guaranteed myself the 2-hit on the Umbreon. Paralysis helps, so I don't get hit by Sand Attack this time. Now, Ice Punch is also a 1-hit on the Vileplume, and Thunderbolt 1-hits the Gengar. So overall, so much more consistent at this level. I get lucky critting the Houndoom for a 1-hit, and I clean up the Murkrow after and make it to the Champion Lance. I had to play that battle intro just because I love it so much, but this fight is not going to be hard. It is definitely not deserving of an intro today in terms of dramatic tension. I am going to one-hit the Gyarados, Aerodactyl, and Charizard with Thunderbolt and one-hit all the Dragonites with Ice Punch. If anything survives a single hit here, I will be really surprised. I make it to the Charizard, and predictably, Thunderbolt does secure the 1-hit. After that, Aerodactyl is next, and it has lower special defense, so Thunderbolt once again 1-hits, and with that, Elekid completes the league with a time of 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 39 seconds. But the game is not over. We still have all of Kanto to complete. I'm going to skip ahead here to when I'm facing Janine because, as you would expect, all of the Kanto gym leaders are completely trivial. Elekid has no resets against any of them, and that is where I want to mention the Electric type's unique advantage in Generation 2. There is no major battle in the game where the opponent is a ground type specialist. Yes, there is a fight against Brock, but 2 of his Pokemon are water types, and the other 3 are really weak to Ice Punch, so yeah, he was no problem for Elekid. Because all the gyms in Johto are basically the types that did not have gyms in Generation 1, the ground type specialist, which previously was Giovanni, is now blue, and he only has 1 ground type on his team, which is Rhydon. So yeah, let's see how Elekid does against him. Up first is Pidgeot. Thunderbolt, 1-hits, so yeah. As you would expect, pretty easy for the start. Next he sends in Rhydon, I go for Ice Punch, and it just barely does not knock it out. I was sort of expecting it to go for Sandstorm or Fury Attack here. It really likes to use those moves, but for whatever reason it goes for Earthquake today and knocks Elekid out. Alright, so apparently the trainer with the Earth Badge is allowed to give Elekid 1 reset. For the next fight, I just equipped the Nevermelt Ice to ensure that I had the damage range I needed to one-shot the Rhydon. From there, I one-hit the Alakazam with Return. I two-shot the Exeggutor with Ice Punch. Like, he does use some full restores here, which is really annoying because he used Leech Seeds. It's just like wasting my health and my time. But in the end, it goes down and it wasn't really that consequential. Next, he sends in Arcanine, which I crit with Thunderbolt, so that's a one-hit. And of course, Gyarados is too. So there is only 1 trainer left, and while the tension builds, I'm just going to talk through navigating the darkness in Mount Silver so that all of you know how I do it. The first stage in the process is to walk to this tile when the Pokeball is in the bottom left tile of the screen. Then I walk 3 steps over so that this Pokeball is 2 tiles away from the edge. After that I walk straight up until my character bonks into a wall, and then straight to the left until I bonk into another wall and see this Pokeball. Then I go up and over until I bonk. This will be 1 tile to the right of the Pokeball, and then I want to move my character so that it's in line horizontally with this item ball. Then I walk to the right, bonking into a wall. By the way, I can tell when I hit the wall because my steps slow down. Following this, I turn my character, and then I take 1 step. After that, I go up and bonk, left and bonk, up and bonk, left and bonk, and if I have done all this right, I will see another Pokeball on the screen. From there, I just need to go up and bonk, right and bonk, and then I go down and bonk. Once I get here, I turn my character up, and then take 1 step up. After that, I go to the right, bonking into the wall, turning my character to the left, and taking 1 step to the left. From there, all I need to do is hold down up on the D-pad, and I will successfully clear the darkness. With that little explanation out of the way, I think the tension has built enough, so let's face red. For this battle, I have changed up Elekid's moveset. It now has Thunderbolt, Curse, Return, and Rest. The reason is, Curse is going to be extremely easy to set up because I resist the Pikachu's most powerful move, which is Thunder. As a result, I am going to have the time I need to set up Curse fully and then sweep his team. The only fear I have with this strategy is that it cuts my speed and most of his Pokemon are special attackers. Because I'm using Curse, I am not setting up my special defense, and because of a glitch in Generation 2, I do not have a special defense boost. You can see that in the bottom left because there is no badge icon by my special defense label. That being said, I still think this is the best choice for me against Red to have a secure and easy victory. After all, once the Pikachu runs out of Thunder, it's going to start attacking with things like Quick Attack and Thunderbolt, and I will be able to rest up and heal to green before I take on the rest of his Pokemon. I decide to go for it. I hit Return against the Pikachu and knock it out in a single turn. Next, he sends in Espeon because he has no type advantages against the Elekid, and this thing does a lot with Psychic. However, I survive on Red and polish it off with Return. He is going to continue sending in his Pokemon in order, so Snorlax is coming out, and that's the perfect time for me to use Rest to heal. It's going to go for Amnesia on the first turn because it knows it can't one-hit me with its range from Body Slam, just because I've set up my defense. Having the leftovers here helps me recover health while the Snorlax does a little bit of damage to me, and by the time I go for Return, I still have high green health. And because of my boosted attack stat, I'm able to knock it out in a single turn. Okay, this is going quite well. Next is Venusaur. Now what I want this thing to do is go for Solar Beam, because then it will take in energy on the first turn and I can knock it out. If it goes for Sunny Day, I'm going to be very disappointed because then the Charizard is going to hit like a truck with Flamethrower. In this case, it goes for Solar Beam, so I get my Return in and finish the Grass type off. Next, Red sends in Blastoise. I guess you can send in the Blastoise next. Like, technically the Charizard is weak to Thunderbolt, but so is the Blastoise, and either way I'm not going to be using that move. Because I'm on high health, the Blastoise sets up with Rain Dance, which really makes no sense when Charizard is coming out next, and Return polishes it in a single hit. So, I've made it to Red's final Pokemon. I go for Return, survive Flamethrower, and with that, Elekid clocks in with a time in its first playthrough of 1 hour, 32 minutes, and 53 seconds, with 5 resets at level 74. This is a game time of 5 hours and 52 minutes. Okay, we need to talk about these results because they are honestly fantastic. In its first playthrough, Elekid was able to get a better result than Smoochum got in its second playthrough, and it is very close behind Magby's final playthrough result. I don't think I really need to tell you that there isn't much to optimize when it comes to this run. All of the battles in the first portion of Johto are completely trivial and straightforward due to Elekid's moveset. By the way, when I played this playthrough, this is the first one that made me realize that Overkill plays a major part in the balance of Generation 2's solo runs. For example, a legendary Pokemon isn't necessarily going to go that much faster than Elekid throughout the early portions of the game, just because Elekid has enough special attack and good enough moves that it's one-hitting most of the opponents it comes up against. So the legendary has no place to differentiate itself from this tiny little baby electric type. In a game like Pokemon Yellow, this doesn't play out because the mid-game level jump forces Pokemon to level up more if their stats are too low. In those cases, Pokemon with fantastic stats don't need to do the training, and so there is a major differentiation between the two types of Pokemon. But in Crystal, with its strange level curve, we get situations like this. So let's jump into my second playthrough with Elekid, and as things get started, I just want to mention the order in which I played these second playthroughs. The first one that I did was this one, because after the initial result that I got with Elekid, I had no anxiety about doing this second run. I was like, yeah, it's gonna be easy. It's going to be a lot of fun. Let's jump right into it. In contrast to that, I definitely ended up procrastinating with Pokemon like Tyrogue, just because I really did not want to do another run with them. I always try to make sure to tell you the order in which I did the playthroughs, just so you can get a sense for where my skill was at when I did the run. What this means is if I played my second playthrough with Elekid first, by the way, I played all of the first playthroughs before I did any second playthroughs. Anyways, so this second playthrough was done first, which means all of the other ones, like Magby and Smoochum and Tyrogue and Togepi, I had more experience when I played those runs in comparison to this Elekid playthrough. That is very key to note. Now we're going to jump way ahead to the middle of this playthrough, and here I want you to notice that I have taught Elekid Hidden Power Dark. This ensures its DVs are maxed out, and honestly I didn't really have a better option. What coverage move would be good to give this thing? It's fine, it doesn't need any, so let's just go with Hidden Power Dark. Having this move does give me better damage ranges against Morty, which is primarily why I even walked over and picked it up in the first place. It allows me to one-shot the Gengar, that way I don't have to burn my Mint Berry during this fight, and I can just use it against Chuck. The only way for him to win is if he goes for a turn 1 Dynamic Punch and gets a critical hit. By the way, if it crits, it still needs to get a good damage roll. Overall, Dynamic Punch has less than a 1% chance to knock Elekid out. Because of that, I really like my odds here. Next, I'm going to play some footage of the Claire fight. Yeah, there really isn't much to talk about with this. Even if the Kingdra crits with a Hyper Beam or a Surf, it will not knock Elekid out. So this fight is also completely free. With the gym challenge out of the way, I make the first major change to Elekid's approach to the game, which is to fight optional trainers before Victory Road. These people have mostly fully evolved Pokemon that give good experience yields, so doing the training now makes a lot of sense. My target level here is level 56 before the league. Also, remember the paralysis I had there against Magneton last time? Yeah, it's because I forgot to use Fire Punch. I accidentally clicked Thunderbolt, so without that mistake, this team is trivial. Finishing the fight, I'm just barely not level 56, so I fight some wild Pokemon because it is critical that I am level 56. That's because I'm going to use all 7 of the rare candies I have collected to this point in the playthrough to boost Elekid from level 56 to level 63. The reason I struggled with the league previously is largely because I didn't use rare candies here and my level just wasn't high enough. What I've started to learn about Pokemon Crystal is that if you are going to use Curse against Red, there is no reason not to use your rare candies right before the league. Giving a Pokemon a significant level boost here usually will give you the key things that you need in order to get through the league unscathed. Usually this is better damage ranges against, say, Bruno's Machamp, Karen's Umbreon, and perhaps with the slow Pokemon, outspeeds on Lance's team. At level 63, I have a guaranteed one-shot on every single one of Will's Pokemon. Koga is slightly more difficult. I have guaranteed 1-hits on 4 of his Pokemon. I expected the Muck to be a 2-hit with Thunderbolt, but I got a critical hit in this case. Bruno follows, and for this fight I teach Return so that it gives me better damage ranges against both of the Hitmons. In this case, Thunderbolt is the best move against the Hitmontop. It has a 43% chance to 1-hit, whereas Return only has a 35% chance to 1-hit. Ice Punch 1-hits the Onix, Return 1-hits both of the Hitmons, and then I have a guaranteed 2-hit with either Return or Thunderbolt against the Machamp. My goal here was just to ensure that Cross Chop wasn't going to knock me out. In this case, it is doing somewhere between 38 and 45% damage, and with a critical hit, it will do between 85 and 99% damage. That does mean there's a loss condition here, which is basically if the Machamp crits, but if it doesn't crit, I get through the fight, which is what happens in this playthrough, so Elekid is moving on to Karen with no resets. My damage ranges against Karen are all quite good. I'm going to 2-hit the Umbreon with Thunderbolt, 1-hit the Vileplume with Ice Punch. Thunderbolt has a 78% chance to knock out the Gengar, and then Return has an 81% chance to knock out the Houndoom. I'm just making a mistake here, I really should be using Return. If I make it to the Murkrow, it is obviously an easy one-shot. And in this case, even with my accuracy dropped, I make it through Karen with no resets. Lance, of course, is trivial, so let's move on to Kanto. Here, I make a minor route update, which is just to make things a little bit more experience efficient. Once I defeat Blaine, Elekid levels up, and here I use my 2 remaining rare candies. That way I can gain all of Janine's experience, and then I am a higher level fighting Blue. I do want you to note how dominant Elekid is in this fight. It can one-hit his first 3 Pokemon, all of them are a guarantee. The Exeggutor is only a 57% chance to one-hit, but I get it in this case, and even if I don't one-hit it, it's probably going to do Sunny Day, Leech Seed, or Solar Beam. Sunny Day can boost Arcanine's damage, but I'm going to 2-hit it, and even with a Flamethrower with Sun Boost, Elekid is going to survive. And once the Fire type goes down, Gyarados is last, so yeah. Elekid has made it to red. 0 resets. Well done, tiny electric baby. By the way, I cannot imagine using this thing in Pokemon Yellow. The electric types really had a major glow up going from the 3rd version in Generation 1 into Generation 2. So I'm sure you're aware how this video is going to finish. It's going to finish the same way I finished the last playthrough, by setting up Curse on Pikachu and then sweeping Red's team with Return. But don't worry, there's a little bit of spice right at the end of this video because I realized in testing that my former strategy was extremely deficient. If you remember, I said that I wanted the Venusaur to go for Solar Beam, but it almost always goes for Sunny Day if Elekid has green health. Because of that in testing, I actually lost fight after fight after fight against Red, and it got me to the point where I was very frustrated and I was confused why I got so lucky in my first playthrough. I almost felt like I was going to have to go back to formula with this one. I felt like Elekid needed a completely new endgame strategy. However, that is not the case. The Espeon is going to do damage to Elekid before I use Return. This brings me to orange health. Then the Snorlax, because it sees it will not KO me, is just going to go for Amnesia, and I can knock it out for free. All this time I'm healing with the leftovers, giving Elekid a little bit more health, but not enough to take it out of the KO range of Venusaur's Solar Beam. As a result, the AI is just going to go for this move, not realizing that it is a 2-turn move. It will charge Solar Beam, and I can knock it out for free with Return. This strategy then works because the leftovers heal enough health that the Blastoise goes for Rain Dance, allowing me to knock it out in a single hit, and then all I have to do is survive a single Flamethrower from the Charizard, which Elekid does quite easily, and Return knocks it out. As a result, this baby Pokemon clocks in with a final time of 1 hour, 25 minutes, and 39 seconds, with 0 resets at level 76. This took 5 hours and 35 minutes of game time. So let's compare Elekid, Smoochum, and Magby's final results. If we look at the very first split, which is Falkner's split, you can see that the electric type is just able to get by the flying type trainer faster, and from there, the rest of its game is mostly just faster. Magby actually catches up a little bit in the mid-game and then is very close until the champion Lance. However, it loses a little bit more time going into blue and then significantly more time at red. This is largely because Magby's strategy against him is just less consistent than Elekid's. Smoochum, on the other hand, bleeds a lot of time during the initial split of the game. Despite being an ice type, it just doesn't have Powder Snow until level 13, and it really cannot fight Falkner without it. If we look at a graph of levels by trainer, we can also see these interactions playing out. Throughout the early game, Elekid is overall a lower level, and then by the time it reaches Will, it's actually gained a lot of levels, and it's quite a bit ahead. That is because with it, I am using more rare candies earlier on, just because of how capable it is. Whereas with the other two, I need to save them a little bit longer to ensure that I have the damage ranges when I need them. Finally, here's a graph of game times by trainer. You can see that Elekid and Magby are very close together throughout the majority of the game. However, the two diverge at the very end when Magby needs to put in a little bit more training before red, whereas Elekid can just go right into him because Pikachu is his lead. So now I have to really say that I am kind of humbled by these results. Coming into this series, I did not expect any of the babies to do this well. I pretty much assumed that none of them would get times under 2 hours, and that just really shows my lack of understanding for a game like Pokemon Crystal. However, the process specifically of playing Elekid really taught me so much about these games. So today, with its time under 1 hour and 30 minutes, Elekid earns itself a spot in the B tier. And this is not a spot at the end of the B tier, this is a spot in the middle of the B tier. It got faster times than Lapras, Tyranitar, and Espeon. However, it wasn't faster than everyone, it was slower than Venusaur, Gengar, Dragonite, and it actually exactly tied Meganium for real time. They both had times of 1 hour, 25 minutes, and 39 seconds. However, I ranked Meganium ahead of Elekid because it finished the game with a better game time, as well as a lower level, and it did have 2 resets, so with a perfect Meganium playthrough, of course, its time would be better. For Pokemon like Lapras, Tyranitar, and Espeon, I do think eventually they will be faster than Elekid when I do redos, but don't hold out hope for these 3 to be significantly ranked ahead of Elekid. 2 of them are slow growth rate Pokemon, and because of the overkill factor, which I mentioned earlier, I don't really think there's that much of a lever for either of them to pull to achieve significantly better results. Right now, I would estimate if I did another Lapras playthrough, maybe I'd get a time like 1 hour and 22 minutes, and I think for Tyranitar, I could probably get it down to 1 hour and 23 or 1 hour and 24. With all that said, I hope you're all impressed by Elekid. I certainly am. This thing was way better than I expected it to be. And now with Magby, Smoochum, and Elekid finish, I have to start digging deep, because the final 3 babies really do not have good base stat totals. So coming up next in this series next weekend is going to be Cleffa, Igglybuff, and finally Pichu. I hope you tune into those videos. They are going to be really fun. If you made it this far, you're incredible. Thank you so much for watching, and an extra special thanks if you support me on YouTube or through Patreon. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you in the next one.